So this is the last class. How time flies. I hope you get enough from this class, and that is even better if you feel interested in second-hand driving. You want to do something further in the future. Then But anyway, even though you do not any research in the future on second-hand driving, still I believe the information you get and all what you have done will be actually very helpful, right, for your future career. I want to do this way. Okay, online students, you are doing great too. Thank you so much. So for this class, I want the online students to do the oral presentation here. Basically, we will go through the two stages. The first one is the presentation, and the second stage is the feedback session. Okay, so that is to say, I would love you guys to provide feedback on your classmates presentation. So at this moment, I would definitely allow your voice heard first, and then I may briefly comment on your feedback on your presentation today. But later, I will email you detailed feedback if that is necessary. Does that make sense? So I will give you the chance to actually interact with your classmates, right, and see exactly what this research proposal look like. Right? But later, if I feel I have a little bit concerns about your approach or some methodology, you want to do further research, or I want to introduce some resources for you, then I will actually provide that, detailed feedback, later, say right after your presentation. Because remember, your paper will not be due until the end of this week. Is that Friday? I think Friday. Do you think Friday works well for you? Or you feel, I really need extra 2 or 3 days?
I think I really need to.
Yeah. So I would be happy to, give you maybe 2 extra days if you need, right? I really want the students to have the quality work, right? Don't say, I just need to get it done. No, you really want to demonstrate your knowledge, and you want to do it really, really carefully, because this is exactly the chance for you to, write a research proposal. I believe this must be your first time, right? Writing the research proposal. This is a great opportunity for you too. I will provide a detailed feedback, on your proposal, right? And if that is successful, you can even do this research based on your proposal in the future, right? So I believe this is an excellent opportunity for you. Good. Okay, so let me know, email me if you need 2 extra days or 1 or 2 extra days. Okay, but if you can definitely be on time, that's of course excellent. So I will provide feedback right after you submit your final paper. So then I will invite you to come here and do the class presentation. This is kind of flexible, because I didn't really require you have to do how many slides, you have to do this, you have to do that. The basic, rationale for me is to, just show exactly your, research will look like. So that is to say, I would expect that all the students will cover all these key important aspects or essential components in your presentation. You do not have to elaborate on everything, but you definitely need to cover each individual essential component. That is to say, for example, you can never miss your research questions, right? You can never, ignore your methodology part. That makes sense. So I would like you to have your introduction and a little bit literature. You don't have to elaborate on the literature, but anyway, so let us know how the previous literature informs you of your research design and what gaps you want to fill, right? And then your research questions. Then, how will you collect the data and analyze your data? And basically, what is the overarching, research design? For example, you are doing quantitative study or quantitative study or mixed methods approach, whatever. And then lastly, you can say something about the significance or the limitation of the study. That is fine. Do you think you're actually on the right track? Yes? Wonderful. Now, welcome you today. So, who wants to do it first?
Okay, I can.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. Okay, you will do first. Okay, good.
Hello, everybody. everybody in class, everybody online. My name is Miriam Makoto, and I'm very excited to present my final project entitled Textual Borrowing in L2 Writing Using the Genre-Based Pedagogy in the French Foreign Language Classroom. This has been one of my favorite classes, and I'm very, very excited to have taken it. So thank you all for being here today, and both my classmates face-to-face and online. All right, so before I get into the meat of this presentation, I just want to give you all a brief overview of what I will be talking to you about today. So I'll start by giving you some background information about the current state of affairs in foreign language writing. And I will sort of give you the rationale behind my topic. And I will also dive right into my proposed study, my research questions, and the methodology that I intend to use for that proposed study. Then we'll get into discussion questions, and that will be the end of the presentation. So on a whole, the foreign language writing instruction, especially for the lower levels, tends to be characterized by a strong focus on surface level features of writing, such as spelling, syntax, usage, and perhaps word choice in some cases. And so you would find that most writing assignments in foreign language classrooms like Spanish, French, and the rest are typically designed to elicit specific targeted forms. And these targeted forms are later corrected and graded on later on. So in her 2009 ethnographic research study of Spanish instructors' perspectives on foreign language writing instruction, Lefkowitz found that half of her participants saw writing as a means of enforcing accurate use of grammar and vocabulary. And so it's almost like it was teachers found the red pen like a sword. They wielded the sword as a means of seeking and destroying L2 errors. And so eventually, with the advent of process-focused writing instruction, which focused on giving students opportunities for multiple drafts and revisions and scaffolding the cognitive process, the scene of the way writing assignments are structured in foreign language classrooms began to change a little bit. However, in spite of all these advancements in L2 writing research, writing in foreign language contexts is still kind of tough waters. And we're wondering why that is so. And some scholars have investigated the reasons why writing is still kind of a tough issue in foreign language. And they've identified two main reasons. One is that people, one reason that they brought up is a lack of professional development for foreign language instructors. For most foreign language instructors, they may not have been explicitly taught how to teach writing in a foreign language context. Writing is still taught as an integrated component it's taught with reading, listening, speaking, and other skills. So writing is not really isolated and taught individually like you would find in, say, ESO or EFL context or even L1 contexts. Another reason that they found is that it's teacher ingrained beliefs of what writing is. Some teachers still believe that writing is nothing more than speech written down. And so one scholar actually referred to writing as the handmaid tale, the handmaid of other skills. And so some teachers seem to think that L2 learners will automatically transfer their L1 writing capabilities into the L2. And so some just believe that it's not really necessary. There's no need really to teach writing because learners will, once they learn accurate grammar and vocabulary, then they will magically write these beautifully composed foreign language texts. However, we know that that isn't always the case, right? if you've ever received an email from a student with a one-liner like "Hello, teach," or no salutation, nothing, saying that they won't be in class today, you know how important it is to know genre conventions. And so even if you are able to accurately produce a text in a foreign language, that doesn't necessarily mean that the meaning will be successful. And so that brings me to the statement of the problem. So if genre conventions is very important, then how do we go about it? Foreign language writing, as we said, has long viewed writing as a linguistic and cognitive act. But according to Highland 2011, he says that successful L1 writing doesn't necessarily transfer into successful L2 writing. And so L2 writing depends on these key aspects. You have linguistic and cognitive knowledge, content knowledge, genre knowledge, and context knowledge. And foreign language instruction, any foreign language instruction that fails to acknowledge that all these components are equally important components to help FL learners, then these FL learners are going to be at a disadvantage. If you focus only on, say, linguistic and cognitive knowledge, or just one component alone is not enough. You have to be able to teach all four of these contexts. And so what is genre-based writing instruction? So these definitions, I took two main definitions by L2 writing scholars. The first one is by Martin, 2008, and he defines genre as a staged, goal-oriented social process. Highland, 2016, also defines it as abstract, socially recognized ways of using language. So these two definitions put together highlights the social nature of writing, and also highlights that it's a process. So social and process. Also, so taking that in mind, the genre-based approach is basically views writing as a social activity with particular power relations and social conventions. And so it explicitly identifies the social and linguistic conventions of different types of texts. And so in a genre-based writing class, you would find that students will be exposed to different genres of texts. They would have a recipe, ad, different genres put together. And this approach usually follows these steps. You'd have familiarization, controlled writing, guided writing, and then free writing. So it's like that step. First, students get familiarized with the first technical text, and then they have controlled writing activities. They would have a table where they would have specific things that they would transfer on and then borrow into their own text to create it. So it's like that phase. And so what's the rationale behind this approach? According to Becken, Carter, and Hawking, 1993, genre knowledge is not something that is explicitly taught. Rather, it is something that is learned as one becomes more and more socialized with the ways of speaking and writing of a particular discourse. So therefore, the goal of genre-based writing instruction is to develop learners' abilities to understand and interpret the rhetorical moves to construct meaning. So essentially, the idea here is that learners don't naturally, we're not implicitly know how genres are organized, but the more we become familiar with a specific genre of writing, then the more we become more accessible to being able to use it, to write it. And so the goal here is to help them to, first of all, understand what the genre is and what the rhetorical moves for each genre is, so that they'll be able to then translate that acquired knowledge to construct their own text. So that's the rationale behind it. So for my study, this qualitative study will basically seek to investigate foreign language writing, foreign language learners, that is French learners, ability to make textual borrowing practices and also their perspectives of that. So it specifically addresses how L2 French learners use model text to design meaning in a genre-based context, and also examines how they borrow specific contexts and why, the reasons behind that. I also look at what their perspectives on genre-based pedagogy is, and the textual borrowing in general, and also try to investigate how investigate the affordances and constraints that come with each instructional approach. So the first question is basically looking at what they produce in terms of what they're able to borrow from the model text and why they borrow those things. And then the next question is looking at, okay, after that's done, what is their perception of French learners of this type of teaching approach, and what they perceive are the affordances and the constraints, the pros and cons, because every approach has its own pros and cons. So in my methodology, my data sources are going to be pre-task questionnaire. So again, this is a qualitative study, and so I foresee doing the study sometime in the future. I'm thinking of a very small sample size to begin with, because it's a qualitative study, so maybe between 8 to 10 participants. And the data sources are going to be pre-task and post-task questionnaires, pre-writing papers, finished written products, and I'll also do post-task interviews, and that's supposed to answer the second question about the perception. I'll go into these later on, but this is just the general overview of what I intend to do. And the methodological framework that I'll be using is this one here, and basically it's in four main stages. And this I intend to borrow it from Rothery's 1996 instructional sequence of genre-based writing instruction. And the reason why I picked this is a lot of the papers on genre-based writing, genre-based pedagogy really quote Rothery's theoretical framework, and so I thought this might be a good place to start. So essentially in stage one, learners read the model text at home and complete activities to establish comprehension of the main text's ideas. And then in stage two, learners will begin to examine the text's major rhetorical moves, and then they discuss it together and hypothesize reasons for using these techniques and the effect on the reader. So they think of the audience in terms of these rhetorical moves. Then in stage three, this activity will be completed at home. That's the actual writing. So in stage four, finally, learners write a quick draft before critically reflecting on their work. And that's supposed to be some sort of reflective stage where they think about the strategies, the things that they borrowed, and why they did that. So now I'm going into detail really to the meat of the study. For the first question, again, I'm seeking to understand how French learners use model texts in genre-based writing tasks, and what specific features they borrow. So again, my data sources here are going to be the pre-writing tasks and the post-writing tasks. So here again, my goal is to explore how they use textual borrowing to design meaning in the genre-based writing tasks, but specifically the what's especially that they borrow from each text. And I will show you a sample of a table that I have developed to help them sort of, okay, what am I going to borrow into it? I'll show you that in a minute. So in relation to this, once I collect the data, I will code the data into three main categories. And these categories were drawn together based on readings that I've done on Kern and Cruisers. And they basically say that Writing has multiple dimensions. There's not just the linguistic aspect, but there's also cognitive and sociocultural resources that these writers use. And so I'm going to code the data that I get to which category. So what kind of textual borrowing? Does it fit under cognitive, or does it fit under linguistic or sociocultural? And then after I code these information, so linguistic here will necessarily refer to the knowledge of vocabulary and grammar, basically lexical information. Cognitive will be things like planning, revising, generating ideas for content that will come under cognitive. And then for sociocultural, the things like cultural specific genre conventions. So knowing how reader-writer conventions work and how to strengthen those relationships all fall under sociocultural. So based on the data that I collect, I'm gonna basically code it into these three dimensions. For question number 2, research question number 2, here I'm looking at what their perceptions are. The main data sources for this will be the post task. So the main data sources will be analyzed for this particular question is text-based interviews that will be conducted after each writing project. So I'm thinking of doing 2 writing projects. One is creating a French ad, and one is creating a French recipe. And so after each of these 2 tasks, I will do a text-based interview. And what these text-based interview would be to interview them about the process that they went through writing their texts, how they used the model texts, what their impressions of the model texts were. These are some questions I have in mind of for the post-task questionnaire. And so the interviews will be based on the responses that they put on the questionnaire. So on the questionnaire, I have questions like, what were your impressions about this model text? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Why did you like it? What kinds of things did you borrow and why? And again, I will analyze their pre-writing drafts as a means of triangulation. So not just the interviews, but also the drafts. So if they said something in the questionnaire about their drafts, then I can always go back and check, well, how come you said that you valued the model text, how the author of the model text put this expression, and yet you didn't use it in your draft? Why did you decide to not use this textual borrowed? You wanted to use it in the draft, but you didn't use it in the final product. So comparing the two, the pre-writing draft and the finished product, and then using that data in the interviews will help triangulate the responses that I get. Because essentially what I want to understand is what their perceptions are of this genre-based thing and whether it works for them or not. So that's my goal for that. So here's a sample of the genre-based text. This is a brief analysis of the text. So for example, they can, they will watch a French film called L'Auberge Espagnole, which is a very good movie, by the way. They have it in English. It's basically, the premise of it is students on an exchange program, and they are all Erasmus students, which is a European exchange thing, and they all end up in the same apartment. And they have students from all over Europe. There's an American, there's a Spanish, there's an Italian person, all together living. And it's a very interesting film to show learners, second language learners. And so after they watch it, they will do a pedagogical task. So this is the task. This is not actually the test for the study. This is a pedagogical thing. So before they actually do the study, they're already used to genre-based pedagogy and how it works. So we watch the movie, and then we read 2 French reviews from this website, Allociné. Allociné will be the French version of IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes or any of those film review websites, and we'll pick two, and we'll really hone into not just the linguistics, not the linguistic information, but also the sociocultural and the things that they think that were used, right? The textual features, the discourse level textual features that were used in that review. And so the prompt for an activity like that will be, first they'll do a think, pair, share. And so in the think, pair, share, what I'm asking them is, what kinds of things can you find in this? Name 1, 2, 3, and then I'll have this worksheet given to them. So as they're looking at the site, they're actually writing down the things that they think it's gonna be valuable, right? And it's a paired activity, so they collaborate with their partner to try to dig for these textual borrowings, right? And then after that, I will go ahead and say, you have one section that says, quelles expressions sont associées avec les idées suivantes? So what expressions will you associate with each of these expressions? So they go ahead and expand what they got. And then for this particular side, now they go into necessarily one category is mots et expressions à utiliser, so words and expressions to use. And then section number 2, écrivez de nouvelles phrases, write the new expressions. So they have like basically a box of words and expressions that I like, words that I will perhaps not use, words that I for sure know that I'm going to use, and I'm going to categorize these under linguistic, cognitive, and sociocultural. So as they're basically going through the table, they know exactly what they're looking for. What are some of things that, is it just textual that you can borrow? Is it an expression or is it not? So they go really in depth into exactly what they think that the author had to do to think of the audience, so that when they're reusing the borrowed things, they can also create their own. So the use of genre pedagogy, basically the significance is that it allows learners to develop knowledge for foreign language writing related to content, context, and genre. When learners read and analyze model texts, they're exposed to new resources for making meaning in the foreign language, which can be used for future acts of meaning making. So when they engage in textual borrowing, learners appropriate meaning making resources from models that they can use either now or in future. And so that's the overall goal. And so Maxim defines textual borrowing as learners' uptake of model text features at not just the word and phrase, but also at the discourse level, and so that they can be able to create their own text. So previous studies, most often in English, ESL, EFL context, have explored textual borrowing in terms of plagiarism, but few text studies in the FL context have explored the actual textual borrowing in genre-based pedagogy. And so that's the gap that I found in the literature, and that I hope that this proposed study would fill. The limitation of this study, I had a hard time with the slide. I do not foresee this study being a big participant size, like I said, because it's a qualitative study. And so because of the sample size of this proposed study, I think that it will be difficult to generalize the findings. And so that might be one limitation for the study. Since I'm only looking at what types of textual borrowing and the reasons why they make those textual borrowing, I cannot fully account for non-textual things. So what if they they see a picture or they see a hyperlink or they see something that's not really textual and they want to borrow it and incorporate it in their writing. This study doesn't really incorporate the non-textual aspects of the non-textual choices that they make. And so that will be another idea for another research study sometime in the future to explore the multimodal borrowing, not just textual borrowing. And so lastly, I also do not really specify the extent to which learners' borrowings reflect their awareness of the generic conventions. And so I think that it will be hard to make like a link. I'm not making a strong link between the textual borrowing and uptake per se, because I'm not saying that, oh, they're doing this because they're acquiring language. That's not what I'm saying. I hope that the genre-based pedagogy in this study helps them create an awareness of the genres so that hopefully they can incorporate it in their future texts. I'm not trying to make a claim between that and acquisition in any way. So that's another thing. And so that's pretty much it. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions and or comments. Thank you.
On your when you're coding in the three categories,
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions, I guess. Do you expect any overlap? And do you?
For question number, which reset question? The first one?
You're coding
Look
right
harder.
there. That one.
That's right.
Do you?
This one?
No, no.
The previous one.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Linguistic, cognitive, and social culture. You're going to code those
Yes.
within text. Do you expect any overlap? And are you going to have a second grader look at it?
Yes, that's another thing. I think that it'll be good. It's always good to have a second pair of eyes, because I do expect overlap.
Yeah.
And I know that not all of it is going to fit in the 3 boxes. And so if it doesn't, I might need to find a different module then. But for now, this is where I'm going to go from. And then if I find anything more, I can sort of grow it out of there.
Because it's so hard to kind of to tag concepts when you're not looking for something specific. You're
Yeah.
an idea.
Yeah.
I do think I have a question associated with this.
With this.
Remember, your keyword here is the textual borrowing, right? Then how do you define textual borrowing? Since you use this specific, say, framework, so here it addresses not only the linguistic resources, it also addresses cognitive, social, cultural, and dimensions, multiple dimensions in writing. But how all these are related to textual borrowing? Because when you go to the quote, did you realize Maxim's quote? Yeah, textual borrowing refers to the learner's uptake of the model textual features. Again, see, this is textual features, right? Including word, phrase, and the discourse levels.
So it's
Then how
mainly linguistic.
That's right. Then how this textual borrowing is related to what you want to code, right? In terms of social, cultural factors and cognitive factors. For me, I'm not very clear. Could you please explain that to us?
Very good question. Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. So what I thought when I saw Maxim's quote on textual borrowing was it fit exactly into the first box, the linguistic resources, because it looks at language, not just the discursive level, so the word phrases and stuff, but it's mainly linguistic. And so the newer addition to it, perhaps I would need to create my own definition, I guess. Because that's another thing I was thinking of while I was creating the study was how do I find a definition that fits all of this? Because to me, that's not what borrowing is. Maybe I need to change it from textual borrowing to just borrowing as it is, because I think that learners don't just borrow from text. They just don't borrow words and phrases, and that's it. They might even borrow style or audience. All of that comes under the cognitive, the planning, how all of that comes into play. And so that's why I don't just want to stick to textual borrowing.
That's interesting. That's so interesting. How do you tell they're borrowing of the style? I mean, if you do
So-
textual analysis, right? Which specific evidence are you looking
So that's why I created this prompt here.
Uh-huh.
So for here, they have, the table is long. So they have each category. They have sociocultural. So I integrate this into the course so much that they're used to doing this in class all the
Okay.
time. What are the discoursal things that you pick on the linguistic level category? Okay, now we're done with linguistic. We're moving on to cognitive. So in the cognitive, what is the writer's theme? How do you see this translated into it? What is the audience for this particular? If you take the review thing that I said earlier, how do you think that the audience perceives the writer perceives the audience? Why do you think that those planning phases fall under the cognitive? I don't know if I'm explaining myself right, but that's how I envisioned it. But perhaps I put myself in trouble.
It helps. It helps. I think that I got a little bit clearer here now. So that's it to say you definitely believe teacher scaffolding will be important, right?
Yes.
Guide the students to understand the whole, say, not only just the artifact per se,
Right.
but even scaffold with the construction
Mm-hmm.
process.
The process aspect of it. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I just think I want one example. This is so interesting, right? So one example. Can you give me one example to show? See, this is exactly what the students can borrow in terms of the social cultural,
Right.
say aspect.
So if I can take the French ad, for example,
Yes.
that I had my students
Yeah.
create. I've actually done this before in class. It's like a pilot
Okay.
for the study. So if you don't mind, I will log into it real quick
Go ahead.
just to show you what I mean.
I'm so happy to see that how you incorporate what you have learned into this project, because we actually discussed the genre-based learning, right? And then you have this genre-based pedagogy, and you give even the specific pedagogical tasks that you want to use in your class. So that's actually very motivating and exciting for me. So I just want to make sure that this data analysis, works well. The questions are so easy to understand, are well constructed.
So for these, it's like a written journal where they're creating a French ad.
Mhm.
And if you go into this one, for example,
Okay.
if you don't mind me sharing my students' work. So here you see for this journal, you create a French ad with your partner from a French website called Truc Maison. Truc Maison is basically a website where people swap houses. And so they've already gone into the website. There's also a video to help them understand what the website is about. The objective of this is to help you in doing real world authentic tasks while exploring new text. And so they have instructions necessarily on what they're going to do. And so these are texts that they borrowed from the website. Then there's a part where I ask them, what is the audience? Did they delete it? So I asked them, what is the intention of the audience? What's the intention of the writer? How do you think that will affect the audience? And so they answer the questions based on the model text. So with that in mind, when they're creating theirs, they think of, okay, I need to think about my audience. I need to think about these things. Okay, how can I steal the author's style into it? So that's what that's where I was coming from. And so when they're done, then they go ahead and create this prompt here, and they have their text over here as well. So it's not very pretty at this point because it's still
That's really good. So why not change that specific wording? Textual borrowing is so kind of fits the term already. Have you ever actually checked the scholar called Flower Dew? Flower Dew's work from Hong Kong.
No, I haven't.
Flower Dew. So check that one. So this is a scholar who actually say researched a lot of students, especially doctoral students, textual borrowing, even writing for publication. You know, say I know most of the participants were actually Chinese scholars. How they actually borrow the texts from the model text. For example, if I'm interested in publishing in this specific journal, then I actually find at least maybe 5 or even 10 model texts. And then, you know, he actually addressed how this, you know, say, textual borrowing becomes effective, you know, or successful for them you know, to publish, right? So at this moment, when we talk about textual, we still believe something to do with linguistics features, right? No matter, you know, say higher level or lower level, but all of them are linguistic levels, right? For example, the phrases, textual. Now, here, after I saw this task, and I also noticed that you actually address audience, you address, you know, say the purpose. So these are big picture of the writing, right?
Yes.
So, what do you think, guys?
So yeah.
So really, you know, say.
So maybe.
Textual borrowing.
So my thing was that was an internal struggle that I had to whether I stick to the fine grained details of textual borrowing or whether I look at the bigger picture of, okay, what is the writing in general? How are they borrowing not just the textual, but also the other stuff? But I think that it might be better to just stick to textual borrowing.
Yeah, you can say textual borrowing and the skill transfer. Right, skill transferring or what transferring? What, because you are trying to transfer their skills, you know? Because I mean, at least the textual borrowing is just one important part of your study, but you actually look at something else too. Right.
Okay. So maybe change my questions.
You add something else.
Yeah, add something.
If you don't think that you want to actually delete that textual borrowing because it is still essential, right? Then you can say text borrowing and
skill transfer.
Skill transfer, because we can talk about the, you know, say rhetorical skills, right? The genre skills,
genre knowledge,
or even knowledge transferring. I mean, it can be a little bit
broader,
but you know, still try to operationalize these terms, right? Always, this is exactly what the learners or the researchers want to do. You can, of course, stand on the shoulders of the giants, but if you have something new, you created yourself, always, you know, say give a really good operationalized definition, right? And then in your data analysis, everything is clear.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Any other comments? Questions? Really, really good. Any other comments? Back here. All right. Again, you just give me the big head.
Thank you.
Are these some of your students?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have a ready-made framework?
I have a. Yeah, I mean, but this I can't use because it's like pilot.
Yeah,
so,
you know,
I need IRB for it.
To be honest, I'm impressed by Miss work because she never, talked with me about this project at all. And I feel, this links to our, you know, say course so well, right? Okay. But she has another topic for dissertation. Yeah.
If I run out of a topic, I can always switch this. For future, I use it.
So this isn't what you want to do?
For my dissertation? No, this is just a side project. No.
This is not. This is her second project.
Yeah,
her second project. She actually did this so well already, you know? Yeah, of course. We can go from here. Next time maybe in 2 years, right? After you finish your dissertation, you know? This is exactly something you want to pursue. Because genre-based pedagogy is so popular, and the students benefit a lot, and they become really more aware of the, you know, say genre knowledge in the rhetorical structures, right?
I love teaching genre. That's why last semester I did the recipe.
That's right.
With my students.
You know, it's always nice for you to actually introduce new genres to the students, right? Yeah, I think for your dissertation, of course, you cover them too, because in your class, you definitely introduce different genres to us, right? That's right. Genre is everywhere.
I feel like for foreign language writing, the writing is always so mechanical. Like this is then gaps, fill in the gap, right? This, right? So I grew up with that,
Uh-huh.
so now I just don't want to teach that for my students at all. I want them to create their own.
Yeah.
So mine is on the systematic differences in English L2 syntactic complexity and accuracy in Chinese L1s with different educational environments. So the environments for this one is Taiwan, China, and Hong Kong. I know Hong Kong's Cantonese, but it's close enough. So writing proficiency is an essential component of academic and professional success, and obtaining various aspects of writing competence has proven a challenge to all writers, but has been shown to be especially difficult for second language writers. Two important constructs seen to represent quality writing are syntactic complexity and accuracy. So previous research by Lou and I, that's a paper we went through in this class, I believe, systematically examined differences in student L2 writing with different L1 backgrounds, and they found significant differences in syntactic complexity and accuracy across L1s. Remember, they didn't just do Mandarin or Cantonese, they did it across a lot of different L1s. So were the differences in L2 syntactic complexity between the various student populations due to the inherent effects of the L1 on the L2? So was it their L1 that was causing the difference, or was it the difference due to the pedagogical methods and learner environments? So the goals of this study, the goal of the current study is to examine the differences in syntactic complexity and accuracy in English writing among college level writers with the same L1, but with different educational backgrounds. The students chosen were from China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. So just a quick map to let us know where we are. So we have Taiwan here and China. They're both Mandarin. Taiwan does have a significant Hakka population, and they speak Hokkien, but everybody speaks, it's called Taiwanese on the island, but everybody speaks a form of Mandarin. And so, of course, down here you have Hong Kong, and they speak Cantonese, and in Shenzhen across, they speak some Cantonese and Mandarin as well. So my research questions: are there significant differences in the syntactic complexity and accuracy of English writing among Chinese L1 college level EFL and ESL students with different educational backgrounds? So we have EFL and ESL because in China and Taiwan it's going to be EFL. In Hong Kong, with ubiquitous of English, they're going to be an ESL environment. So that's an added variable to it. So which measures of syntactic complexity and accuracy show significant differences, and which measures converge? And how can this inform research and curriculum design? So syntactic complexity, accuracy, and fluency. The identification of complexity, accuracy, and fluency as distinct areas of L2 performance has become a focus consideration when assessing L2 writing performance and proficiency. These are some things we went over in class. And so CAF, complexity, is representative of more elaborate L2 elements in the learner's knowledge, an increase in L2 knowledge as the learners increase and structure their output in a more sophisticated way, such as subordinate clauses relative to the total number of clauses. And accuracy has been referred to the extent in which L2 proficiently aligns with the norm, minimizing errors and deviation. Evaluating accuracy can be difficult, not only due to measurement difficulties, but also sociolinguistic aspects of it as well. And finally, fluency in the narrow L2 sense is a multidimensional phenomenon incorporating speed fluency and rate and density, as well as the breakdown and repair fluency. So those are two add-ons to normal fluency. And together, these CAF has proven to be a reliable construct of L2 proficiency. So data collection is two sources for this data collection. And at the end of it, we can come back and I can show you these sites. I chose these two because they're freely available. They were all done by foreign language scholars. So this isn't collected from testing centers and that kind of thing. These were collected for the purpose of research in L2 acquisition. And so they're in controlled conditions. It's about the best corpora I could find for this purpose. And it's free, which is really important. So one of the important aspects of the above corpora is that the essays are not just sorted by language, they're sorted by country of origin where the student was educated. This is really important for mine because if you just did it from Mandarin, they could be from Hong Kong, they could be from Taiwan, they could be from Malaysia, they could be from China. There's a lot of places where Mandarin is spoken fluently. So this allows the research to be done on a country by country basis, not L1 alone. And likewise, since the data is collected specifically from a database for linguistic research, care is taken in the selection and sorting process to ensure that their similar genre and skill level are grouped together. So it's sorted very well for the purpose of research. Due to the large sample size, we have millions of words and thousands of essays. Confounding variables should be reduced or diminished. So data analysis. The first one is the syntactic complexity analyzer we did in class, and this is Xiaofei Liu. He's the one who designed it, and this will be used to measure the 14 measures of syntactic complexity. You can, as we saw, you can upload, batch upload it once you have the software on your computer. And the only thing it doesn't do is for accuracy of it will find your T units, but it won't tell you correct and incorrect T units. So there are programs that do it, and Telemetric does it, but a lot of them are pay. So I'm trying to find one that isn't a pay one, or if not, I'll have to do it by hand. So that's kind of one of my stumbling blocks when doing this. Is okay, I have to find an analyzer that will look at T units, because I put in some correct and incorrect T units, and it will kick out a T unit that's incorrect without letting it's a T unit. It won't tell you if there's a problem with it or not. So that's one of the stumbling blocks I have, is how I'm going to get the accuracy. But Telemetric is one that came up a lot. Schools use it a lot, universities use it a lot, but they have nowhere on their website of how much it costs. So that makes me think it's expensive. So, and for data analysis, ANOVA will be used to compare the results from the three different groups. And so Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Chinese students. And so analysis of variance is the statistical model, and associated estimation procedures will be used to analyze the differences among Chinese, Taiwanese, and Hong Kong student means in the sample categories. So for discussion, China and Taiwan, which are English as a foreign language environments, Hong Kong, which, as I said before, is an ESL environment, provides a unique opportunity, like previous research by Liu and I, to investigate whether differences in syntactic complexity they found were the result of different L1s, which was implied in the research, or if the differences are in fact a result of the different educational environments. So furthermore, if it is found that the difference in syntactic complexity and X are not influenced by the L1, so if the results come back showing me that, okay, that's not what it was, well, then that opens up another line of research where you can say, okay, what were the different teaching environments, and where were these teaching environments working where syntactic complexity was good and where was it not working? So even if I don't find what I'm looking for, I still learn something in this.
Do you think the same, for example, research can be conducted on another language?
Yes, and if I do find that it is let's say we find out it is Chinese, or let's say we don't find out. Okay, there's 3 or 4 different languages that we could do this with. Arabic comes to mind. There's that popped up, and Spanish is the second one. So what you could do is you could do the same thing for 3 different languages and compare the results you get from those and see what you get with that. So you would do within language and then compare and see how that turns out, and see if okay, all the languages show the same issues or not. Yeah, but there's 3 languages that came right off when I was doing this. I couldn't think of maybe French. French is spoken in a lot of different countries as an L1. I think it still is in parts of North Africa. So here's the one from Japan, and this is free corporate. They want to see that your study has been accepted before they'll start sending you. But it is free data, so they will send you all the data. And these are researchers for second language, and so they've collected them in a controlled environment, and they're all essays written in second languages. And the essays are from Japan, from Taiwan, from Thailand, all the students, and they're sorted that way, which is great. Yeah, so it's not just lumped into second language, it's lumped second language, controlled environment, and the country of origin, or your L1.
So if you want to work on another language, you should have such data, you should have access to such data.
Yeah, a different corporate, but from this site and the other one too, it's sorted by their L1. So it's not just foreign, it's not just Chinese, it's L1, and within different L1s, it's within the country it was tested in. it's great that it was done. These corpora are done by linguistics researchers, so they really did a good job of sorting it how you'd like to see it.
Excellent. Can I ask one question?
Yes.
For me, you kind of like assume that there are some differences, right? Did you notice that in your goal?
Yeah, I hope they're different.
Okay, so I just really want to point out that because usually, even though we say, okay, this is a qualitative study or quantitative study, we have assumptions, right? But we seldom say that like exactly like we have already assumed that this will happen. You know what I mean? So can you go to that slide there? So the goals of your study. You said the goals of the study, the purpose of the study actually. Sometimes we call. Yeah, you said the goals of the study is to examine the differences. So then I would say, are you sure there are differences?
So
you should
if there are,
personally know whether there is or not, right? So I don't think that we want to include this so for sure, like it's kind of like definitive, right? So we can definitely start to examine if there are any differences, right? Then you can continue to say, if so, in which ways, whatever, then everything would be great because no matter what results, this goal will be achieved.
Yeah, and I didn't put it like this in my paper, but here I got ahead of my skis a little bit, and so I anticipated what the research will say. So, but yeah, I'll make that change if I see it.
This design is so good. And now another thing, so suppose we have already identified some differences. What will you go next? I'm talking about the data because right now you only want to do the textual analysis, right? Then right from that data, so this is only one data set. That those are called texts, right? We actually encourage students to triangulate their data sources, right? So what specific data sources you want to use in the next step in order to address why these differences occur?
If there are differences that we found, then my next step, I want to see what the curriculum design is for each of because all the students presumably will have the public education aspect.
Okay.
Some students will have private, but and all these will have. I know Taiwan does. I know China does. I'm assuming Hong Kong does. That they have their public schools have curriculum that is nationwide.
Okay.
So then I'll go back and look into what I can, as much as I can. How did their curriculum design, or how did they design their programs that would maybe affect it this way?
Can you elaborate on that? Because the curriculum it can include the textbooks, it can include the
textbooks are and they're nationalized too, which is nice. But textbooks are probably the easiest way because once you get into the classroom, you don't know what the teacher's going to do.
Okay. Then now my question is, what are the data you should consider? For example, you will do like the observation, or will do the interview with the administrators, or interviews with the teachers, or even just the interviews with the students. You know what I mean?
I'm trying. I probably interview with the teachers.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because I'm not. Students know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and administrators, you don't know what kind of teachers.
Exactly.
Teachers know exactly what they've taught.
I'm even thinking focused groups would be excellent.
Yeah. I'm trying to think in my head how I would get a hold of them.
Because you want to know how writing actually is taught in their context, right? Or what are the goals for their courses? What are the course objectives, right?
Yeah.
And these are so important, right?
Yeah.
Those, I mean, these prompts should be helpful too, right?
Yeah.
You have semi-structured interviews, right? And each individual question should address some focus, right? For example, you want to have get some answers about their classroom teaching, approaches to teach, right? You can talk about for example, the overarching philosophy, right? What say writing will look like.
And so
different aspects, right? And then later, this gives you a chance to understand how and why the differences occur.
And probably the closer towards, say, for the U.S. 10th level, but closer to college, to when the students were getting into college and not the younger teachers. You see what I mean? Teachers that were teaching the kids, because these are college level. These are basically college level. So the teachers that were teaching them when they were 11th, 12th grade or 18th. You said not when they were teaching when they were little, because that really wouldn't matter. You want to see the ones that were teaching when they were actually trying to get better at their writing.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. Wonderful. Do you want to include this as well in your proposal? Because for me, if I, in the future, I would say, if you really feel, wow, that is excellent, I want to continue really do this project, not just the proposal, but I want to do it, then I would say, once you do it, you want to publish in the future, right? And then I would say that specific questions can be elaborated. I mean, say, even extend the questions. You only have one question right now, right? You have the, say,
Yeah, what were they? Yeah.
Of the syntactic levels and the accuracy.
Yeah.
Then
So the second question could be what specific, pedagogical factors.
Say
Yeah.
the say results.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, what specific teaching factors?
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't you think so?
Yes.
Then that would be definitely so helpful. It can be even transferred. I mean, the results can be triangulated and say generalized, or even like transferred, I should say, to other learning contexts.
Yes.
Right.
Sounds. I want to go back over there and
Yeah,
start interviewing.
it actually is your work, and this is good enough, so good. But I'm just thinking,
well, I'm going to add.
In the future, you really want to conduct this research. You want to connect, data as much as possible.
I'm going to add that.
It's always nice for you to have really good data set in the future, even right after you become a faculty member and you feel like you do not have time to collect the new data, and then you still get a chance to, analyze the old data.
Yeah. I'm just trying to run through my head because how I can get to interview these people.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. You can even schedule Skype, whatever.
Yeah.
Then I think that would be definitely so helpful for us, because now if you just finish it, okay, these textual features are different, but why and how this can add to our knowledge?
Could you interview? Let's say in China, at a university there, you have a scholar that has been researching the teaching aspect of it. Could you interview a scholar that's researched that?
Of course.
Yeah.
I think so.
Because I'm thinking, how can I get the most? Because I just don't. It's hard to find
individual
that can speak English. See, there's that that's the aspect. I have to not only find the teacher that's willing to do the interview, I have to find a teacher that can speak English to me.
That's right.
So.
I mean, it's definitely possible. I do think there are
I'm just
scholars, I should say,
Yeah.
who do maybe research in second language writing.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds
And,
fun.
for example, I would say I would judge. I would assume or imagine till now. For example, in certain Chinese contexts, still maybe the attention is paid to the lexical levels.
Yeah.
Right. Not like the overall, or they pay attention to the syntactic features, but they even pay more attention to accuracy.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I think that would definitely help because you really want to know what causes results.
Yeah. What are you practicing is reflected in?
That's right. Excellent.
Anybody else?
Now, let's give Zhang big hand again. So impressed by all the projects. Wonderful.
And I'm going to add the interview part to my proposal.
If you like.
Yeah. No, I want
That's
to.
better.
Yeah.
But at least this seems like a full-fledged now. Because at least you have different data sources, and you get to understand the big picture, better, right? So because at this moment we always don't want to just say, hey, these are the different textual features. So what?
Yeah.
Right? Then we say, hey, see, we can argue language influence can be, accountable, right? But still, the learning context can be the essential part that influence students' writing. Right? So this is exactly what you want to argue.
Yes.
Right? But if you do not do the interview at all,
you're
or
missing
not do
you're
the
missing a lot.
questionnaire at all, you can never explain.
Yeah.
Don't you think so? Okay.
I agree.
That's right.
Yeah. And also one last thing, what I liked about this is either way it works, you've learned, okay, it's the L1. If it doesn't align, then maybe it's how they were taught.
Yeah, but to be honest, I feel like you definitely find some differences.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's going to be a mix of the two.
In some aspects,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
For
certainly.
example, accuracy, for
Yeah.
example, right?
Yeah.
Or you even can, say talk about like the context, the
Yeah.
effect. For example, Hong Kong English as a second language, because those, students get a chance to expose to the language.
Yeah.
Right?
And especially like in China, I know you mentioned accuracy because they're all part of this is preparing them for the Haokao.
That's right.
Yeah, so they're much more. They're locked in
Yeah.
that part, and they don't have that in Taiwan and Hong Kong. So there will be differences there, but they're really sharp at.
Right. Wow.
Okay.
Wonderful. I really look forward to the implementation of these proposals.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I this is what I wanted to
And
research.
this is so good because you use the corpus. We
Mhm.
discussed it. We discussed this. Xiaofei Lu. So it feel like everything is actually.
I was so glad you went over this in class because I was like, because I was thinking about because the syntactic complexity analyzer I'd never heard of before, and I was thinking, oh God, all those texts are going to be so hard to analyze. And then I saw that I was like,
That's right.
and I was like,
And
well, that's
and
great.
Also, that is so important features, right?
Yeah.
That
Yes.
actually reflect the students' overall writing quality. Wow.
Okay.
Excellent. So we will have our next presenter. Present.
Okay, yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah. Go ahead, please. Where did you find all these corpus? Did you know it before?
No, I looked.
Just search.
I searched and there's a couple other scholars that I've been in contact with and I asked and they sent me this way and yeah.
See, this is so good. Now corpus analysis is so popular and it seems to have so much data there.
Yeah, you could so much data and such a powerful tool.
That's right, powerful tool.
Yeah, so when I saw it when you introduced me to that class, I was like, that's exactly what I want. That's what I'm looking
Good.
for.
Okay, so before I start the presentation, I wanted to change the topic and I changed it a bit. That is why I emailed you actually last night. This research has already been done, but instead of teacher feedback, they have repetition. So they use task structure and they repeat it 4 or 5 times, yes, without any feedback to see, okay, how students can improve their writings. So I thought maybe if we add feedback to that task structure, yes, in an EFL surrounding, maybe we can have a better result, yes. Or to see, we will have 2 groups, I'll talk about it, yes, to give some of them feedback, one group and one group, yes, not to give them feedback to see what would be their result. Okay, so what is the problem? Back home in the country, in Iran, they don't put much emphasis on writing. And unfortunately, yes, even in college level or at institutes, yes, still they have 2 methods, 2 old methods, that audiolingual and grammar translation. Yes, they use those to teach writing. And when the students come out, yes, they have problems with writing. Yes, I'm one of them. Yes, so as a student, yes, when you get out there, you see, okay, still you have a lot of problems. And writing is really important because back home, the only way that you can communicate with other colleges, yes, or the communities related to your major out of the country, that is, yes, writing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, yes, maybe so because we use writing there as a communicative tool, yes, so why, yes, we should try to work on it or to do something to improve a student's writing. And also to let the teachers, yes, know something that maybe they can use to teach writing better in classes, or to see how important teacher feedback is. Because as my experience, I didn't experience a lot of teacher feedback back there. Even maybe some, especially in some levels, they don't know about feedback, yes, or they don't know is how to give feedback. Okay, so the objective exactly is this, yes, to improve EFL students' writings and emphasize the importance of feedback in writing classes. and let the teachers know how to apply, yes, that in a class, especially in a TBLT class. Okay, so here we have two questions that I'm going to work on them. The first one, yes, I will talk about, yes, the TBLT and even the task structure, exactly what I mean by them. Yes, so I want to see the influence or the effect of task structure with teacher feedback in a TBLT class. So we have one group, yes, after giving them the task structure, the task design and everything, so they start writing. Teacher will give feedback, and then before the last or the final draft or the post writing, they will receive feedback. But the other group, yes, they will have the pre-writing, and then they will have some repetition in 3 or 4 weeks. Yes, again, they will have some writings, but they will not receive any feedback, and then they will go to their final writing. So to see the difference, yes, between these two, yes. To see, okay, with feedback, we get more improvement or no, without, or it doesn't make any difference. So these are the key terms that we're going to talk about. Okay, so TBLT, in TBLT class, the class focuses on communicative tasks, the tasks that the students can use in their real life, or all the tasks are authentic. For example, calling a doctor, I don't know, booking a hotel. Then we have a task structure. In task structure, it says for every task that you have to do in class, you have to organize it first. It must be organized. Even if there is a writing, the students are supposed to write something, you should define everything for them, organize everything for them, and then let them write. Yes, not to ask them to write, to improvise something without any plans. And task design, it is make decisions about what to teach. Yes, so when the teacher goes to the class, he has a plan what he is going to teach today. Whenever it's my turn, you can hear that. Or task repetition. Okay, so it is believed that when you repeat a task again and again, yes, over and over, yes, you learn it better. Yes, you learn it. It becomes cognitive, so you try to learn it, so you have to repeat that task. And also feedback. So whenever we have a performance, especially a student writes something, then it is a gap there, and the gap between the desired performance and the student's performance. So the feedback, especially the teacher feedback, tries to reduce that gap. Okay, so for example, students living in some countries like Iran, they are EFL learners because their first language is a language that is different with the language that they are learning, and that is English. Yes, and especially the students don't have too much exposure, or I can say just they have a little exposure to the language that they are learning, and maybe that exposure just happens in class. Yes, when they get out of the class, they don't have too much exposure. Okay, the literature review, as I talked about it, yes. So that's this research has been conducted, yes, but usually they have focused on the spoken languages. Okay, if it is a task structured, if it is for example, if they work on it, if they have any feedback, everything it is on the oral output. Yes, we cannot find too much information related to the writing, yes, output to see. Okay, so for this, as I told you, yes, we will have first pre-writing, and then we have repetition. Then it will happen at least 3 times, yes. And one of them, the students will get feedback from their teachers, and then they will have their post-writing. But in another one, the students will have the same process, but they will not receive any feedback. Participants are supposed to be, so they must be Iranian students, EFL learners, and will be 60 students from from two language institutes. Usually try to have 30 students in each class. And to collect the data, as I told you, yes, during a period of 5 weeks. The first week, the students will have a pre-writing. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2, 3, and 4, yes, they will repeat the first writing, yes, again and again. And during each one, the teachers will give them a feedback, yes, and then finally they will ask them to, okay, they have their post-writing or final writing, but the second group will have the same process, but they will they won't receive any feedback. And to analyze the data, again, the data will be analyzed according to complexity and accuracy and fluency. And ANOVA, yes, according to that SPSS 2007 will be used to, yes, to analyze the data. And about the limitation of the study, the most important one is finding an institute that will let you, okay, to conduct that research there, yes. And as I told you, in that context, it is not really easy to find an institute that uses TBLT. Most of the time, grammar translation or audiolingual, yes, will be common. So that is another problem. And that is another thing. It is about teaching the language instructors to how to collect the data, how to give feedback, because you've got 2 classes. Okay, you as the researcher should go and do that. Okay, will the institutes allow you as a teacher to go to their class and, for example, to handle the class for 5 weeks and then collect data, or no? You should teach the instructors of that institute to do such a thing. Yes, that's another problem. Okay, I think, and these are my references. Yeah, that's it.
Great topic.
Thank you very much.
What are your variables, by the way?
So the variables, we will check complexity, accuracy, and fluency, and also we will check once the influence of task structure and repetition on writing, and once will be just task structure and the repetition without feedback on the.
But you're testing complexity. You're saying the total number of the control group, the total number of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be a t-test?
If you compare only 2 groups,
yeah,
then you do the t-test.
T-test.
I do think that I have one question about your research questions. I don't think that is really clear to me. So can you go back?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, go back to take a look at these research questions. Let us discuss them together.
And don't take my answer for t-test because I'm.
Yeah, no. I will. Yeah, because I wasn't sure about it. Yes,
You
to be honest about it. Yes.
You definitely want to make sure that the questions are definitely accurate.
Okay.
And this always, I told my students, focus on your research questions.
Yeah.
Research questions tell you everything. Then you know for sure what specific analysis you want to do.
Okay.
Right? For example, if you want to test the differences, between the groups in multiple categories, although I'm definitely hopeful, but at this moment, I want to double check with you about these research questions. Now, your first question goes like, what is the influence of task structure with teacher feedback? Blah, 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 right?
Yes.
The second one is, what is the influence of task structure? You want to say without?
Oh,
right?
sorry, that's without feedback. Yes.
Okay. Now, I didn't see any comparison at all. But when you do the t-test or no, you want to compare something, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do you think that you really want to compare? If you want to compare, you should reflect that, here in your research question. For example, you want to say, how does the influence or effect, how does the effectiveness of something differ between A and B?
Uh-huh.
That makes sense?
Good,
If you really want to say, I want to test the differences, you want to do the quantitative study, right?
Okay,
And then
yeah.
usually you can say that if there's any, say, significant differences between certain, intervention, with another one that is actually usually the controlled one, the experimental control. You should definitely show this comparison in your research question.
For example,
Does it make sense?
yeah, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, for example, we have this question is here.
Yeah.
So the second one should compare the difference between this first one and the second one without the feedback.
Yeah, because it seems like you try to compare the task structure with teacher feedback.
Yeah.
And the task structure without teacher
Without
feedback, right?
feedback, yes.
Anyway, I want to discuss this with you.
Okay.
I mean, this is my second question. Here, we just regard this as a correct one. So, for example, like a task structure with something, task structure without something, right?
Yeah.
And then you want to compare.
Okay,
and then
so
you can
we
just
should have
use
another question.
You definitely I definitely don't think that you need to say like what is the influence of something and what is the influence of something. No, but I'm not quite sure whether you have already taken the courses such as the quantitative study or quantitative research study already, or research design methods, research methods.
I'm supposed to take one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the truth. If you use influence, a lot of people will believe that you will do the qualitative study rather than quantitative study.
Good.
Have you ever done this before? Because some words are so important. For example, if you say effect, then I know, you're doing a quantitative study. If you say effectiveness or effect, then I know, this is the quantitative person. But it's the influence, because sometimes we talk about like how this impact students' perceptions or learning. Then I know you want to definitely collect some other data sources. Does it make sense? Then you really do not say the influence of something, because if you say influence, I even want to do a questionnaire, or I even want to do something else to actually. So this is so even the wording can show your research approach.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? So if you really want to do this, regard this as experimental study, you want to compare a certain intervention, or you want to compare like a specific pedagogical approach, right? And then you want to say how this differ, how does something differ from something else, right? And then you can say if you want to say exactly the effectiveness, then you say something like effectiveness, or how will something, what is the significant, if there is any, or something like that, right? If there is any significant difference between the effectiveness of something and the effectiveness of something on students writing output. Does it make sense?
Yes.
You definitely want to compare.
Okay.
Compare what now we need to discuss. This is also I'm not so familiar with. Task structure, I'm really not familiar with. So what are you exactly saying? How can you define this in your study?
Yeah. So
once again, we talk about the operationalize the definition, right?
Yeah.
So in my understanding, task structure usually is something to do with the task-based learning approach, and you have different steps.
Exactly.
Right?
You have the same.
Right?
Yeah.
And how can you regard? How can you don't say operationalize the task structure with teacher feedback and task structure without teacher feedback? Because when I read this, I feel like, why you just focus on the teacher feedback? But because here, like task structure is the same thing. Then you have task structure with something and task structure without something. Then I feel like, see, you just really want to highlight that teacher feedback. Does it make sense? So why that task structure is there? So seems like you actually have something to say, right?
Yes. No, this is what I was thinking, that, okay, so we use task structure. Yes, we think that, okay, with task structure, we can improve a student's writing. Yes, because they use it in language classes. Now, to make that task structure is more important, what about adding feedback to that?
Can you give me an example, like teacher's feedback incorporated into task structure? Can you
So,
give me an example?
yeah, for example, yes, they ask the students, yes, to write about something.
Okay.
They give them a topic, yes.
Okay.
Then they come and organize the paper. They say, okay, here you should write your topic. Then here you should write, for example, the first paragraph. This is the second paragraph. This is the third one. For each one, you should have a subhead. This here, for example, you should have a subtitle. Here you should have your, for example, conclusion. Here you should have the summary. They give each one the points, yes. So, and then they ask the students to write. So when the students write, yes, that one, then they teach about that subject or they teach about that topic, yes, and then they give them the exactly the same thing again, yes. They repeat that.
Okay.
So they do it again and again to see how the students improve, yes, having those tasks that have already been organized, but they never give them feedback.
I see.
Yes,
I see.
they never correct the students. They never tell the students, okay, for example, in this way you can improve, I don't know, for example, your writing, or here you should have your ideas. Just they bombard the students with the tasks, with the organized, yes, activities that they should do while they're writing.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I got clearer. So that to say, you are talking about the possibility, not only scaffold the students pre-writing stage,
Yeah.
but also the post-writing stage. Because if you are talking about the task structure without the teacher feedback, that to say you give them a real detailed instruction before they write.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
But if you have like task structure with the teacher feedback, you not only teach them how to write very like step by step, but also you give the feedback based on what you taught them before.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
I think
Okay.
kinda, yes.
Okay. Then that's interesting. Now I feel you might even don't want to compare just the two, because you have task structure, you have teacher feedback, but without teacher feedback, right?
Mhm.
For example, like do you want to compare the task structure and without task structure? For example, you do not give them specific step-by-step instruction. That is something you want to highlight their task structure.
Yeah, so just I want to see, okay, for example, how if task structure works, yes or not. So, for example, if with those task structure we can improve the students' writing or not. We
Okay,
don't know.
that is to say you actually test the task structure too.
Yeah.
So that's to say now I know, because you actually have different variables here. So you not only have the teacher feedback, right? You also to compare, say, plus task structure or negative or minus task structure,
Yes.
right? You even think about the influence of task structure on the student's writing product.
Okay.
Is that what you mean? Because at this
I'm
moment,
not sure.
when I read these research questions, I just feel like the variables are not clear to me.
Okay.
Once again, you can compare different things. You can definitely compare here, judging from what you said just now. I feel like you should have 3 groups rather than 2.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? The first group, you just do the normal thing, exactly the traditional one. You didn't give students the task structure at all. You just do the regular whatever, traditional
Right.
one. Then you have a group, task structure introduced,
Right.
but with no teacher feedback. Then you have your third group. Those are task structure, of course, included. Meanwhile, you also incorporate teacher feedback. Then you compare these 3, or you want to do another group, then you didn't do anything at all. Then that would be something that is very interesting, because later you may argue task structure with teacher feedback is better than task structure without teacher feedback. But both are better than those without task structure at all.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Good. Yeah.
Right? And then I think everything is clear now. Then because at this moment I feel like I really don't know what specific things you want to compare.
Yeah, exactly. Now I got it.
Right?
So
But right after you
Yeah.
say, right after you discuss, these are my 3 groups. One without anything, without task structure, without teacher feedback. That is actually your control group.
yeah,
And then you have 2 experimental groups.
Good.
One is task structure with teacher feedback.
Yeah.
One is task structure without teacher feedback. So everything is so clear now. You can just decide whatever is best for the students. Does it make sense?
yes, yeah,
Then
yeah.
it
Thank
was
you.
much better.
Yeah.
Then I know now you want to know you want to compare these 3 groups, and meanwhile you want to should also address say the measured features. For example, you want to address the language accuracy, you want to address those syntactic whatever complexity, you want to address something else. Then everything's so good.
Thank you very much. So I got it. Yeah, just I want to make sure.
Uh-huh.
Yes. So I should have 3 groups. The first group, yes, we use the traditional method. The second group, we use the task structure to see what's the result of the task structure.
No, you want to say task structure with the teacher feedback.
Yeah,
And the
and
next one.
the next one is task structure without the feedback.
That's right.
Okay, then I
Right?
complete
Because
it.
it seems to me both are important.
Yeah,
Because you are talking about the task structure with and task structure without, then it gives me a hint that, see, you only highlight the teacher feedback. Does it make sense?
Yes.
But actually, you highlighted task structure too. Why not have your controlled group as without task structure at all? And then everything is clear,
thank you very much.
right?
Dr.
And then
Yes.
I think those you're good to go. I think that then I would say the research questions are good now because now you should actually reframe your questions.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Then
3
you can
questions.
say what are the effectiveness of the say task structure with teacher feedback on your writing. So what is effective of blah blah blah, and how they compare? How do they compare?
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
Yes.
And then because you assume, because usually if you are doing the quantitative study, you always want to have the hypothesis. Does it make sense?
Yep.
So your hypothesis 1 would be task structure is better than traditional one. Then your next hypothesis is task structure with teacher feedback is better than task structure without teacher feedback.
Thank
Then
you.
you need to test your hypothesis.
So is it okay if I write the questions and send them to you?
Sure.
No? Okay.
Sure. I'm always happy to see the questions because
Okay.
it's so hard for students to write a really well structured.
Yeah, it was really hard.
questions.
Yeah.
These questions, so and as Minnie, mentioned the other day, she just feel like, oh wow, questions are everything, right? And you have good questions and you feel like you even know how to analyze your data. Right? Because you go back to your research question 1. How will you address this teacher feedback, right? And then you know for sure that say at this moment if you do not use influence, you use effectiveness. I know this is quantitative data. You needn't worry about the qualitative data at all. But if you really want to use that influence of something, you can collect data from the students' interviews, whatever.
Yeah.
Then you can see why like that, like John's work. Just now he mentioned that he want to say the differences in the textual features, but why, right? At this moment, you can also, but you don't have to because this is actually complicated already.
Yeah.
You compare 3 groups, right? You want
Sure.
to see the effectiveness. Then in your proposal, you just want to make this task structure clear to the audience.
Okay.
How do you define and operationalize your definition of task structure? And what specific, say feedback added to it. That is to say, you try to make us very clear your 3 groups,
Okay.
the different interventions as to these 2 experimental groups.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Right?
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, about the feedback part too. And I don't know, maybe you said this already, I'm sorry. Did you specify what kind of feedback you mean?
Yeah, teacher feedback.
What kind of teacher feedback are you doing? Because
Oh, yeah.
it's like all corrective feedback is really corrective.
This is
So
yeah.
which one are you thinking of using? Like if a teacher says, well done, or versus the notes that they write on them.
Mhm.
Which one? Is
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't mention it there, but what I was thinking is how to give feedback on the papers.
On
Yes,
the written.
exactly. Yes, to put feedback on a student's paper.
Okay,
Yes.
so the written corrected feedback.
Yeah.
So for written corrected feedback, then okay, let me show. It's okay.
Okay.
I'll talk to you about it.
Okay.
Think about the research studies too, the previous literature. Usually you want to address how your study is based on the previous study and what specific studies need to your research design. We always do not say like, see, this is interesting, I want to do it. You want to base your study on the previous studies, how you can address the gap. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Because at this moment, I didn't do research quite much. In task-based language teaching, especially this task structure, do you think that you can have already at least have some good study articles?
I think, yeah.
Okay,
There are some.
then you want to discuss that in your literature part, in your final paper.
Sure.
Okay, then you can want to say, okay, just because of, say what they have already done, and I found a certain gaps I want to fill, so I designed this study. The purpose of this study is to blah blah blah. So these 2 research or 3 research questions informed my research design or guided this study.
Okay.
Right?
Sure. Thank you very much.
That's everything, right?
Thank you very much.
Now,
everybody.
yeah, we can. So I'm so happy with all the progress you have made. So this is very helpful. So for online students, don't worry, I will provide a detailed feedback on all your presentations. I hope this would be another opportunity for you to learn. Okay, I will write a detailed feedback. I will go to check your submission there, and I'll try to finish that tomorrow. Okay, then you can of course incorporate my comments, feedback into your final paper. Okay, I look forward to reading all your excellent work. The final piece. Okay, I trust you will be doing great. Okay. That's all for this semester. I just feel like I feel sad for me to say. Oh, right? So this is the last class, and I enjoyed teaching this class really very much. Maybe next year I didn't get a chance. Well, will not get a chance. I will do maybe the following year, right? Because this is elective course, right? But I'm really happy for you because you made great progress, and I want you to use whatever we learned in your teaching as well, not only the research, right? And for some reason, I just feel like you definitely should incorporate writing components in your class, even though we do not think that you are actually the writing scholars, right? But this should be helpful. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
all
very
your hard work and the insights.